Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I'm Jenelle Riley from Variety. Before we're joined by our guest today, I want to let you know that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies entirely on donations to provide emergency assistance and free educational programs to SAG-AFTRA artists. This conversation today is made possible thanks to the generosity of our supporters. Over the past year, the foundation has given nearly $7 million in COVID relief to more than 7,000 performers. So if you are a SAG-AFTRA artist and you need help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video. Thank you for your support. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce actor Troy Kotsur of CODA. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
And thank you very much to everyone in SAG-AFTRA.
Yes, you are a dual nominee. You're nominated for supporting actor and also for the ensemble of CODA. I know it's kind of a cliche question, but how did you find out about the SAG nominations and what was your reaction?
Well, that morning I was ready to make a hot cup of coffee, and my daughter was in the living room and she was looking over at me. So when I found out, I was just jumping for joy, and I let my daughter know, and I just felt such a change, and I was so excited I forgot about my coffee, and my cup of coffee got cold. I didn't even touch my coffee for the rest of the day.
Were you in touch with the rest of your cast when the nominations came out? Because it's such a beautiful ensemble. I'm so happy it was recognized.
Yes, we had been in contact through text messages. We have a group text, the whole cast of CODA, and we supported each other. We were celebrating and sending messages back and forth, and we've remained in touch. So thank God for inventing the smartphone to have friendly access to communication for deaf people.
This is an audience of your fellow actors. So I actually always like to know, how did you get your start in acting? What was your first job, whether it was, even a school play, or it doesn't have to be professional, but the moment you kind of caught the bug?
Well, it first struck me, you have to keep in mind that this is in the 1970s. And so there were no closed captioning or subtitles in TV or film. And I loved watching Tom and Jerry as a child because there wasn't any dialogue. It was just cat and mouse. They were chasing each other and there was so much action. And obviously the body language would tell the story. And so I would remember 5 minutes from a certain episode of Tom and Jerry. And the next day on the school bus, I had to get on the bus with a bunch of deaf kids from kindergarten through high school. And I would share what I had seen on the Tom and Jerry episode the day before. And when I saw these children's reaction, their eyes began to sparkle at my storytelling, because a lot of these kids didn't have a TV. And so instead, I would tell the stories from the episodes of Tom and Jerry, and I realized I really enjoyed storytelling. And so I was only about, maybe a junior in high school, and I kept thinking about being an actor, and that led me to different theater productions. So I went to a hearing school and I joined drama class, and all the other students, maybe about 20, were hearing. I was the only deaf member of the class. And for the interpreter had to voice my monologue during class time. And so once in a while, most of them didn't know sign. And so we had to use my interpreter. I had to borrow my interpreter for specific scenes of dialogue during drama class. And I realized the limitations at that point and the barriers, and I wanted to find a way around those barriers. And so I took workshops and theater classes in high school and later at Gallaudet University. And I was involved in various theater companies. And it didn't matter to me the size, whether it was a small or large theater group, but what was important to me was to build myself up and my understanding of acting. And it was so wonderful to work with so many skilled directors and actors and writers and other voiceover actors and so on. And so I went through that journey, and that led me to where I am today.
Wow. I mean, did you have any actors you could sort of look to who were doing what you did, who were also deaf, or you really sort of were blazing your own trail at this point?
Well, I did have quite a few mentors, and there were some acting veterans who were deaf in the 70s and 80s, like Linda Bove,
Oh,
Frida Newman, Phyllis Phyllis Felch, and she was the first deaf person to have won a Tony Award on Broadway
that's
and
fantastic.
in the production of Children of a Lesser God before the film production. And she was one of my instructors as well. And Bernard Bragg. And Bernard Bragg taught me so much. And I was under those deaf actors and professors, and many of them have passed away. But I learned so much, and I'll always keep that with me. And so hopefully I can do the same to the next generation of deaf kids who are deaf or hard of hearing, but want to pursue acting. And what I've learned, I really looked up to all of them. Without those teachers and mentors, I may not be here today.
Yeah. Well, I remember seeing you first in Big River with Deaf West Theater before going on to see you in many productions. And I'm sort of curious, how did you become aware of them? They now I think like they're really well known. They do such amazing work. Did you sort of come out to Los Angeles to work with them, or did you find them when you got out here?
That's a great question, actually. So I happen to live in Arizona, and I was looking for the nearest theater group that would have access for deaf actors and an ASL, and it happened to be in LA, and it was only a 6-hour drive from my hometown. So I thought, why don't I give it a try? Why don't I give it a shot? And so Deaf West had asked me, hey, do you mind doing another production? And I said, sure. And I never thought of living in LA, but I really enjoyed being in LA, and I would accept whatever roles I was offered. And so it went on from 1994. In 1994, I ended up moving to LA, and I got to know the community and the people. And Ed Water Street was his name, and he was the founder of Deaf West Theater. And he was a member of NTD, the National Theater of the Deaf, which is in Connecticut. And so when I was younger, I would always see, and all of these deaf actors I look up to were all involved in National Theater for the Deaf. And so they had established Deaf West, some of those folks. And so really, I was able to hit many birds with one stone, because in LA, obviously, you have Hollywood and TV and film and so on, and you had theater. And so it was great for me to traverse these worlds, to network, kind of build my own network and get to socialize with people. And I ended up working with a few folks over and over again. And there's a friend of mine who told me, and he said, you're going to be a small fish in a big pond. And so when you get bigger as a fish, you can become more comfortable in a bigger lake. And so as people began to know me, they knew where to find me. And it didn't matter where I live. With today's technology for auditioning, you can do it over Zoom. You don't need to go to auditions in person. And I've seen a lot of transformation over the years. And if someone's interested in me and it's a second or third callback, of course I can meet in person, but I've seen the auditioning process change quite a bit since 1994.
Just in the last 2 years, I feel it's changed quite a bit.
Absolutely. And I can save gas. I don't have to drive all the way to an audition. If they're interested in me, they know where to find me. And I can save money for the interpreter too.
The best. Well, now you're a big fish in a big pond with CODA. This is probably the most acclaimed movie of the year. Going back to the beginning, it's funny because it's been a year now since I first saw it at Sundance, where it really took the world by storm. And, watching people fall in love with it over the past year has been so amazing. But going back to the beginning, how did the script initially find its way to you? And what attracted you to the project, and specifically Frank?
I like that question. So when I first read the script, my eyes shot wide open because of the vulgar language in sign language. And so I knew that it had to be shown on screen. And I've been waiting so many years to see that, because I've seen all of these hearing people use their vulgar language in film and subtitles, and the way that their facial expressions are and the vulgarities they use, but we have not seen it in sign language. So now finally was an opportunity to show it on screen, graphic or vulgar sign language. it's ASL just tops the English script. We have so many different choices in ASL, and it was so fun for me to become a fisherman in Frank Rossi. Because in real life, I'm not a fishing kind of guy, but that's the point of acting, is it's fun to transform and portray a character on screen. And so I dove right in, and it was great.
I believe Marlee Matlin was already attached to this movie, and I know you knew her, obviously, through your work. Did she recommend you, or was that just a coincidence?
Well, yes, Marlee would come and see my productions at Deaf West Theater for quite a while. And she said that she became a fan of mine. And I was grateful. I said thanks. And we had known each other a little bit. And there was a project that I directed that was a low budget movie called No Ordinary Hero. Super deafy. And that was a film. And Marlee was involved in that project. And she had 3 or 4 scenes where I directed her. And we got to know each other, and she saw me as a serious artist, just like I look at her as a serious artist. And so when CODA came up, folks were asking her, who's a great deaf actor, who's a male, who we should audition? And she put several names out there, including mine. And due to all the controversy and politics about authenticity or attaching an A-lister or not, I'm so grateful to Marlee for really standing up and insisting what was best for the movie, that the authenticity of an actual deaf actor could portray a deaf character, and our director as well, which it's truly been an amazing journey. And I'm so grateful to her.
I believe you also knew and had worked with Daniel, who plays your son in the film.
Yes, that's right. The first time I met Daniel, he was also involved at Deaf West Theater, and it was a production of Cyrano. And so we both acted together on Cyrano, and he reminded me of myself when I was younger. He was so passionate. He was so hungry to become an actor. And it was touching to me to work with Daniel. So when he was cast in CODA, it was like, oh yeah, we were actually roommates, and we had an Airbnb together for 2 months. And it was like father and son, 24/7. We lived together. We were under the same roof. We were able to socialize. And we brought that all on set, and we really had that bond.
I was curious about that because you really feel like a family, and that means, all the good and bad that entails. Sounds like the chemistry formed pretty quickly. And then you have Emilia Jones, who I don't know if people know that she's British. And she gets, sort of thrown into this family. How quickly did the chemistry with her develop?
To admit that before I met Emilia in person, I was a little bit nervous because I was concerned about who they had cast, to be honest. And so when I met her, I felt such a sense of relief because she was such a professional actor. She's very young, but when we began to work together, she wasn't only learning the ASL in her lines of dialogue, but she really made an effort to communicate with her deaf cast members on and off set. So we developed a great relationship. And when we socialized with her, she really reminded me of my daughter because they're close in age. They're only about a year apart. And I have a daughter. So my daughter is a CODA. And so Emilia is portraying a CODA in this film. And working with her was truly amazing. And she is an extremely gifted actor. And later on, I learned that she was British and you've been using an American accent. It's not my problem because I can't hear. But when I heard that, I was impressed. And she could sing too. And she could sign. And she had been learning sign language over the course of 9 months prior to meeting her. And she really gave it her all. And she's a valuable ticket in the future, and she's going places.
I love her. Speaking of your daughter, I heard your daughter sings too.
Oh, yeah. So about 2 months ago, she said she wanted to give up. My friend wanted to give up his piano. And he asked me, do you want it? And I go, hey, maybe my daughter's interested. So I brought this grand piano over And my daughter just became immersed and very serious with playing her piano. And she showed me on her laptop what she's been learning. And one night she was practicing, and I walked up behind her and I touched the wood of the piano to feel the vibrations of her playing, and similar to her guitar. So I'm able to touch the wood of the body of her acoustic guitar and feel the vibrations as she's practicing and being creative. So I really enjoy seeing how passionate she is. But it's so funny, the parallels between the movie and my real life daughter.
I actually heard, correct me if this is untrue, that, you know, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Frank asks if he can touch Ruby's throat and, you know, feel what she's singing. And I heard something similar happen between you and your daughter in real life long before this movie was even made.
I remember when my daughter was a bit younger, maybe in kindergarten.
Oh, wow.
We went to see a variety show. And so I was sitting in the audience with my wife, and our other friends were hearing, and they were crying in the audience. And I looked over and I was like, why are they crying? And they said, your daughter's voice is so beautiful. And I said, I was began to develop a curiosity. And so I asked her, hey, can you sing again? And she said, yeah, sure. And so I touched her throat and I felt the vibrations, and I go, I wanted to understand why hearing people were enjoying this so much. And I was impressed. If I looked over and everyone in the audience was just looking at their phones or falling asleep, that would mean my daughter's singing sucks. And that's how I'd know.
That sounds really familiar to the scene in CODA when they go to the concert. Was that in the script, in Sean's script, from the beginning, or did that come from your life?
Well, the script actually applies to so many CODAs who have been through similar experience having deaf parents. And so they've borrowed quite a few true stories from a variety of real life CODAs and what you see in the script and in the film. And so basically a lot of those experiences are out there in the real world. Just like I'm telling you about my experience being deaf, having a hearing daughter. There's many people out there who are CODAs, and they say that, oh yeah, that I've had a similar experience. But there's millions of people out there that weren't familiar with a CODA experience that they're now able to be touched, and like a fly on the wall. It's been really interesting to see the audience reaction to the film.
You know, this film it's set in such a specific East Coast fishing town location. And I'm curious how you went about researching and preparing for these roles, because I'm someone who just gets seasick really easily. So that part would be the hardest for me. Are you a pretty good fisherman now?
I'm more of a water sports kind of guy, like water skiing, jet skis, going out on a boat, but not really fishing. I know how to swim, and I know what it's like to be out on a boat going on high speeds in a lake. But going out in that Gloucester, Boston area, I'm from Arizona, so I had never seen a whale before. And really, the waves were so powerful that you felt quite differently going out on a boat really early in the morning. And secondly, I remember that after they had cast me as Frank Rossi, our director, Sean Hayter, she visited a fishing boat. And so it was an actual fishing boat, and she had sent us some shots. So when I saw those shots, I kind of got the vibe, and I said, okay, this is what it's going to look like. And when we arrived in Gloucester, we had 2 weeks of rehearsal before shooting. And so I would go out with actual fishermen, Daniel, Emilia, and I. We would get up at about 3:00 in the morning, and every morning we would go out with them and get used to their environment and the heavy clothing and gloves that they would wear, the protective heavy jackets, the thick gloves, and there's so many different species of fish, lobster. There's the monkfish that has a light hook over the top of his head that can really bite you. There's squid, and they just are so slippery, they pop out of your hands. And I really had to get used to the way I would even pick a fish up. It's not easy to pick up a slimy fish. They can just flop out of your hands. And so through the weeks, I really dove into that fishing experience. And so then I was able to feel like Frank Rossi as a fisherman. And so it was so fun for me to make that transition into character.
One of my favorite things about this movie is how Frank and Jackie are this married couple that we don't usually see on films. And I don't mean just in that they're deaf. They're so madly in love with each other. They're constantly having sex. What was it like to get to show, not just that side of deaf people, but that side of parents?
Yes, they really love each other and they forget how much noise they're making. So those characters would forget they have a hearing daughter, Ruby, around. Well, we're getting busy. And so really, we had to be aware and check our surroundings, and then we could go ahead and make noise. That's how those characters had to think.
It's such a great portrayal of parents on screen that you don't get to see very often. And looks like it was really fun to shoot.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. It was so easy to work with Marlee because we knew each other and we knew we would have a lot of fun working together. And oh my, we did.
So what ended up being the most challenging part, the most challenging scene or moment in the movie for you to shoot?
Sure. I can tell you that, first of all, it was a challenge to have a sex scene with an Oscar winner. But I felt honored. Secondly, most of the time in post-production, they have ADR, right? So they can fix the dialogue in post. So if there's a problem with audio or with dialogue, they can fix it later in post. But on the production, my challenge is to make sure that all of my signs are just ready to print and that's why we had directors of ASL. We had Ann Tomasetti and we had Alexandria Wales. And so to have those deaf eyes on set watching on a monitor behind the camera, when they are able to let everyone know it looks good, then I can feel relieved that my signs are captured correctly before they're sent to post, so I can give my best performance and the best options possible, because you cannot fix sign language in post. You can fix sound, but you can't fix sign language in post. So that was one of my biggest challenges.
Wow. I mentioned this film premiered about a year ago at Sundance, where it won 4 awards, including the Audience Award, Best Ensemble. What has this year been like for you personally? As this movie has touched so many people and, been seen by so many people. And now, your fellow actors are honoring you and your cast with these nominations.
When I grew up, I always loved Sundance because these are independent films. These are passionate people who are motivated and creative storytellers. And there has been so much talent showcased in Sundance. So I always enjoyed watching these films. And I never thought that CODA would go this far and that we would win 4 awards at Sundance. And so I feel overwhelmed. I'm just in shock, really. And I'm excited. It's just such a blessing and an honor. And I'm so glad that Sundance recognized us and focused on our story. It didn't matter that we were deaf actors. It mattered that it was a good story and that it was an inspiring and positive message for anyone in a broad audience. And so we were just showing a new perspective, a fresh perspective. And so I feel grateful to have Sundance acknowledge and recognize that. And so then it led to Apple TV Plus purchasing our film, and it's still showing and streaming today. And I'm still getting messages from people saying, hey, I just saw your movie. And some people say, hey, I don't know why I didn't watch it so long ago. It's all this feedback and reaction, but it's been so positive.
I feel like just in the last couple of weeks, suddenly everyone has been seeing it, because I've been talking about this movie at least since July. And yet for some reason, I'm getting all these texts now from people saying, I finally watched the movie. You were right. I don't know if that's just me, but I'm like, yeah, I've been telling you for months now.
Right. That is funny. And so after Sundance, I went into the supermarket and several people recognized me and asked to have a photo taken with me. And I said, sure. And I said, oh, I didn't realize how being in a Sundance film could influence you in your private life. And now I have less and less of a private life. So what's your advice?
You want my advice on not having a private life?
Well, why not? I'm a newbie.
I get to be extremely private. So I don't, you should ask Marlee. Have you asked her how to deal with this?
Oh, yeah. So I really need to sit down and have a long chat with her and catch up because all of this is so new to me. And of course, it's so fun and it's exciting. It's been a wonderful journey and I'm looking forward to meeting new people as well. There's so much talent out there. And I've been as a member of SAG, I feel like I'm a part of a family and I understand what an actor's lifestyle is like. And I understand all of the struggle that all of these actors have been through. And so I'm so grateful for SAG-AFTRA to really support us.
Yeah. And like the only advice I can think of, and this is going to sound really basic, is enjoy it. Because I've talked to so many people who get so caught up in the work and the craziness of this season, they wish that they had just like taken a moment to like sort of stand back and just be like, this is awesome. But I think you are enjoying it. So that's good.
I am very much so. And I'm trying to remember to enjoy every breath because this is all temporary. Today will be gone and tomorrow's a new day. And so why rush through it? Just appreciate every moment. It's really a blessing to be among you. I'd like to show you something.
Wait. Oh, flip it. Oh, that's so cool. Oh my gosh, this Harold Russell Award. Wow.
Yes, that was about 2 months ago.
Fantastic.
It was an honor to get that,
Wow.
receive that award.
Well, I suspect it won't be your last award from SAG, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
The Harold Russell Award, he was the first disabled member. So he was an amputee way back when. And I feel honored that he was able to break through as a disabled actor. So I feel like I can relate. And so my disability is my hearing, of course, but I just feel very honored to have received this award.
People do want to know, though, I don't know if you can tell us what you're up to next. If you're working on something now, you have this whole new fan base. And I get to feel very arrogant because I'm like, yeah, I've been seeing him in theater for years. But where can they find you next?
There are several projects that we're working on, and one project is called signing animation. And we're making short films in sign language. And so the ASL is being animated, and right now we're in post-production. And another project I'm very excited for is called Flash Before the Bang. And it's based on a true story. And it's in the state of Oregon. There is the Oregon School for the Deaf, and their track team with 8 deaf runners ends up winning the state championship in Oregon. And it's based on a true story. They're the underdog competing against many hearing teams. And I play the head coach.
Wow.
And so it's called Flash Before the Bang. And the reason why it's called that is because, of course, deaf runners can't hear the starting pistol. They would have to watch the flash of the starter pistol to know where to run. So it was a split-second advantage, kind of like seeing lightning before you hear thunder. And so it would give these runners a slight advantage. And that's why it's called Flash Before the Bang. And so I'm quite excited about that project. And there's a deaf director, and the They're their hearing and deaf producing team. And that's a big step forward in Hollywood. So I'm looking forward to that. And they've now partnered with Pearl Street. And Pearl Street is Ben Affleck and Matt Damon's production company. So it's very exciting.
I am from Oregon, from Salem. So I actually know that story. Yeah. Did you shoot in Oregon?
We haven't started shooting yet, but it's in development right now. And yeah, it seems like everything is lining up. But yeah, I signed on to that project and I've attached myself to it, and they plan on shooting in Oregon.
Amazing. Well, when you go to Oregon, let me know. I'll give you all the good restaurant recommendations. There's basically 2. So
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Well,
Good to know.
Yeah. Congratulations on a beautiful movie. Such a wonderful performance. On behalf of your fellow actors and the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, thank you so, so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to all the members of SAG-AFTRA.